Chapter 13. Never Make an Enemy of the Media. Aiden didn't say another word until we got back to the car. "You'd better drive," he said, hoisting himself into the passenger seat and pulling his injured leg in after him, as though it were a package he was bringing along for the ride. He shoved his seatbelt into the holder with a loud snap. I backed out of the parking space and headed down a row of cars toward the exit. "Sorry, the fare turned out. Sorry about your ankle," Hayden moaned as he wiggled off his shoe. His ankle had swollen to the size of a grapefruit. "Oh God, look at that." He winced. "You're going to need some ice," I said, turning out of the parking lot and onto the road. "I'll stop at the first place I see." He flipped down the visor to block the sun. "I can't believe I tripped over those damned cages." I bit my lip so I wouldn't laugh, but I couldn't entirely suppress the smile. What? They were lobster traps." He waved me off. "Yeah, I know. That's what I meant." I turned by a sign that read "Scenic Route," realizing too late that I might not have gone this way before. I followed a road that meandered through a little shingled town and a harbor, where people were packing coolers into motorboats and hoisting sails on sloops. We drove by an inlet where weathered houses stood watch on a hillside, and small children in swimsuits carried silvery galvanized pails, full of things I could only imagine. Minnows fickering in ocean water, sand, shells. Hayden craned his neck and looked around. "Do you know where you're going? This isn't the way we came. Maybe you should turn on the GPS." I had no idea where we were. "Of course I know where I'm going," I said, looking for something familiar. We needed ice and a quick route back to the inn, and I didn't need Hayden any more stirred up than he already was. At the edge of the water, I spotted a restaurant with an outdoor patio and umbrellas over the tables. "I'll run in there and get some ice." "I could use some food," Hayden said. "Teal come with you." He hobbled along beside me to the patio, where a dozen tables were covered with plastic red and white checkered cloths. A woman in a t-shirt directed us to a vacant table. We ordered drinks, and I asked for a bag of ice. While Hayden put his, the menus included a number of lobster-related items that looked appealing, but when I thought about the cause of Hayden's injury, I dropped the idea, the menu, and a house salad. "I'm having the fried clams," I told him, closing. Hayden squinted at me. "Fried clams? Fried. Just this once. They taste good and I don't eat them every day, so it's not going to kill me." I took his hand and squeezed it. "Come on, we'll get some ice for your ankle. You'll be fine, I guess," he said with a resigned shake of his head. The waitress returned with 2 iced teas and a bag of ice, which Hayden immediately draped across his ankle. Then he ordered my clams and, for himself, a grouper sandwich. "But could you please make sure they broil it?" he asked. After the waitress left, we sat and watched boaters walking up and down the pier with fishing poles and tackle boxes. I sank farther into my seat, closing my eyes, feeling the sun on my shoulders. "I wanted to wait for the right time to tell you this," Hayden said. I opened my eyes. "Tell me what?" I couldn't predict if this was going to be good news or bad news. He wasn't smiling, but he didn't look alarmed either. He adjusted his position in the chair. At the Men of Note dinner, one of the people I met was the editor of the New York Times Styles section. Really, this didn't sound like bad news. I took a sip of iced tea and reached for a pack of sugar. Yes, Tom Fraser. He wants to do a story about our wedding. "Oh," I said as I began to stir in the sugar. "One of those how they met pieces? I could handle that." They would probably just do a quick phone interview with us and publish something lighthearted. Hayden adjusted the bag of ice. "Well, actually, it's a little more complicated than that. They want to do a feature article about us and the wedding, with photos. The whole thing. Feature article, ... photos." This was sounding like a bigger deal. I felt a twinge in my chest. "What do you mean, a feature article? What do they want to write about?" did he say. All kinds of things. Who made your dress? Where are you getting your hair done? What color nail polish are you wearing? I don't know. Nail polish? I don't even know myself, I said. Well, they probably won't ask you that, Ellen. I'm just saying ... His voice faded into the background as I put down my spoon. This new information was descending upon me like something cold and dank. Sure, I'd been in the newspaper before. An internet search would reveal dozens of things about me, like the articles in the Times itself on the Sullivan Project and the Wall Street Journal pieces about the Cleary building and the Battery Park deal, not to mention it 2 radio interviews and magazine mentions. But that was different. That was work-related. This was personal. I didn't want my personal life invaded by the media. One watched a group of tan college-age boys get into a Boston Whaler with a cooler and fishing gear, part of me longing to take off with them and never come back. Hayden put his hand over mine. "It will be fine, honey," he said. "And the more you do this kind of thing, the more you get used to it." Somehow, that didn't make me feel any better. "How does this work?" I said. "Do they meet with us in person, together, separately?" I hoped they weren't going to ask me any tricky questions, try to make me say something foolish or something that would embarrass Hayden or his family. They'll meet with us together, right? Don't look so worried. I'm sure we can do it together. I took a big gulp of iced tea. And what about the photos? Where do they take those? "Well, they'll definitely be taking photos in the church," he said. "And they'll be at the Metropolitan Club for the reception." The wedding and the reception. They were covering both. I reached for another sugar packet. Said, well, there's something else, Hayden. I emptied the packet into my glass. Yes, they're interested in our family backgrounds. Mine, because, well, the political connections. Guru and all, ... And yours, because your father was such a financial. My skin was starting to feel prickly. Anyway, Tom Fraser called me early this morning when you were asleep, and when I told him where we were and what you were doing up here, he got kind of excited about it. He said he might want to include it as an angle for a sidebar. You know, girl with small-town roots marries into big political family. A sidebar? My family was becoming a sidebar. Hayden, I don't want to be a sidebar. I don't want any of this. Hayden gazed into my eyes and ran his hand along my cheek. Look, sweetie, I knew you might be a little concerned, and I want you to know that I thought this through very carefully. I analyzed it from every possible angle. I promise you. And no matter which way I looked at it, I came out with the same result. We should do it? But I raised my hand. Just hear me out, please. He leaned in a little closer, his eyes focused, his tone of voice the one I'd heard him use in court, steady and convincing. First of all, he said, raising an index finger as though he were ticking off numbers. My father's always telling me you should never make an enemy of the media. And he's right. We don't want to get them mad. They never forget. They raised another finger. Second of all, we can use this to our advantage. It won't hurt either of our professional lives. Get to know us better, will it? To have a little extra media coverage and let people... He didn't wait for me to respond. We'll just make sure we get in the points we want to make, he said, no matter what they ask. I imagined that might be harder than it sounded, but I knew it was useless to interrupt him. And, third, he went on, raising a final finger, it could also help my run for city council next year. One more way to get my name and face out there. He looked at me, waiting for me to concur. My foot twitched under the table. Hayden, I'm really not comfortable with this. You've come up with all these rationales for why we should do it, but they don't make me feel any better. This is our wedding? He looked away, his eyes fixed on something across the patio. I can't tell them no, Ellen. The Times is already calling our wedding the social event of the season. There are places to draw the line in the sand, but this isn't one of them. And anyway, we're inviting over 300 people. A couple of photographers will barely be noticed. The social event of the season. I began to bite my nails. I feel like our wedding is turning into entertainment tonight. He shook his head. No, it's not, honey. I'd never let that happen. The waitress returned and placed 2 straw baskets on the table with our meals in them. I glanced at the fried clams, but I didn't feel hungry anymore. Hayden removed the bun on the top of his grouper sandwich and inspected the fish. I pushed the clams to the side and stared at the harbor. A lobster boat chugged toward the dock. Hayden touched my chin, turned my face toward him, and kissed me. I couldn't feel anything but panic. I knew I wasn't going to be able to dissuade him, and I would be stuck with this plan he'd agreed to. I kept thinking, what have I gotten myself into? What am I doing? And then all of a sudden, I stopped. What I'd gotten myself into was exactly what I should have expected all along, and I knew it. I was marrying Hayden Croft, and that came with certain responsibilities. I'd told myself in the beginning of our relationship that I would have to deal with this kind of thing when the time came. Well, the time had come. Hayden, I said, forcing a smile, I'll do this. I can deal with it and I'll be fine. I clasped my hands and hoped I sounded convincing. And you're right. The more I deal with these things, the more I'll get used to it. I'm a little out of my element up here, but I know once we get back to New York and I put my business head on again, I'll click right in, and in a couple of weeks, I'll be ready for anything. You can throw the whole New York press corps at me and I'll be fine. Hayden looked down at his grouper sandwich. Well, here's the thing. And then back at me, his forehead scrunched up. Uh-oh. This time, it did look like bad news. They're coming here in 2 days. I felt the burn of a headache igniting right behind my eyes. I slid to the edge of my chair. Who's coming? And what do you mean here? The Times. They're sending a reporter and a photographer to Beacon. Oh my God. I stood up, knocking a spoon off the table. It hit the cement patio with a clang. Why here? Why 2 days? I clutched the tablecloth. TM, not ready for this. I touched my hair. It felt dry and brittle. I looked at my fingernails, the pink polish chipped, the nails bitten and broken. Hayden grabbed my hand and pulled me back toward him. You know, he said, besides keeping the press happy, there might be another benefit from the media exposure. I looked at him. This down-home, small-town thing might be good for us. It could show another side of 2 hard-boiled Manhattan attorneys. He took a fried clam and ate it. Peace offering? I tried to smile. I could hear the lobster boat as it chugged closer. My head throbbed. I picked up the spoon that had dropped, and when I looked at my reflection in its curved surface, I noticed that my face was upside down. You should never have let me cat that clam of the inn, clutching his stomach. Hayden groaned as he limped through the door. Let's just get upstairs, I said. Paula stared at Hayden. What happened to you? He frowned. Lobster traps. Oh my word. You got your leg caught in a lobster trap? Were you trying to poach them? That's illegal, you know? Hayden's face went red. I'm a law-abiding citizen, he said. And besides, I wouldn't even know how to poach a lobster. Paula half closed one eye, as though she were considering this. Then she nodded at me. You had a telephone call. She held out a white slip of paper. A gentleman. She glanced at Hayden. The paper had a pen and ink drawing of the Victory Inn at the top. Hayden shuffled toward me, reading the message over my shoulder. 2:15, Ellen Branford. Roy called. Says he's sorry. Okay, thanks, I said, trying to sound uninterested, as I looked at Roy's name written in Paula's small, cramped handwriting. Let me see that. Hayden pulled the paper from my hand. At least he had the sense to apologize. To you, anyway. He looked at me with a little smirk. We ascended the stairs like mountain climbers, one slow and deliberate step at a time, Hayden making full use of the banister and my shoulder. I unlocked the door and he shuffled straight to the bed, propping his ankle up with a pillow. Do you think it looks worse? He asked. I do. I couldn't really tell. I think it looks a little better, I said. Hayden was a bit of a hypochondriac. It was best to err on the positive side. Well, it feels worse, he said. I could really use some more ice. I'll find some, I told him as I dumped the watery remains from the plastic bag into the bathroom sink. It really hurts, you know, he told me as I put my hand on the doorknob. And my stomach is killing me. Really bad pains. From that clam, I know it. Do you want me to get you a doctor? He shook his head. No, I'll be all right. I walked downstairs trying to figure out why men were so confusing. It really hurts, but don't get me a doctor. I've got terrible pains, but I don't need any help. It was more fun to complain, I figured. One of the maids filled the plastic bag with ice. When I returned, Hayden had both pillows under his leg. I placed the bag of ice around his ankle. Oh, that's great, he said with a sigh. Thanks, honey. I was about to sit down next to him when he added, I was just wondering. Yes, if maybe an ace bandage would help. In a bottle of Pepto-Bismol for my stomach. An ace bandage. Pepto-Bismol. I glanced around the room. As though they might pop up out of nowhere. Okay, I'll go to the pharmacy, downtown. Ellen, you're the best. He patted my hand. As I got up again, he added, could you please pick up some Alka-Seltzer too? I might need that. I gazed at him, lying there. He looked so pathetic, so uncomfortable, the bag of ice melting around his puffed-up ankle. It's all right, I said. I just want you to get better.